morning and welcome to the Independent Living Skills session this Friday morning. We'd like to welcome Richard and thank him for being with us today. Richard is a public affairs specialist with the Social Security Administration serving the Southeastern region. And we'll hear a little bit more about Richard in a few moments. Before that, I just want to go over a few logistics for today. We are recording today's session, so if you would like a copy of that recording, you can let me know in the chat and I can send that out to you. Captions are available through Zoom. You just need to click on the CC live transcript and show subtitles in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. We are supposed to have ASL interpreters. They are not present with us right now, but I'm going to be working to get them in here. So once they join us, they will be spotlighted. And again, chat is available for posting questions throughout the presentation. If chat is not accessible to you, you can click on reactions in the Zoom menu bar and select raise hand. And I'm sure we'll have time at the end for questions that you can unmute. And then so a quick little bio about Richard. As a spokesman for the Social Security Administration in Southeastern Pennsylvania, Richard conducts presentations designed to promote a better understanding of Social Security benefits and services. He also serves as the agency's key contact with social service and government agencies, major employers, and the media. In his career with Social Security, he has also worked as a claims representative and served as the disability work incentives expert in the Philadelphia downtown SSA office. He has received numerous awards for his work in both the aging and disability communities. So again, we welcome Richard, and I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everybody.
There we go.
Okay, very good. So good morning, everybody. So today we're going to talk about Social Security disability program for Social Security. Next week, we're going to be doing SSI. So I'm going to cover a lot of information here. Don't worry if you don't get everything right at this moment, because between the PowerPoint later on and our website and, giving us a call if you have to, you can always get your questions answered. So we're going to go through. So Catherine, can you advance? I can't, because of our setup, I can't advance the pages. So, okay, very good. Thank you. So these are the topics we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the Social Security Disability Program. Like I said, next week we'll be doing SSI. And today we're going to talk about the eligibility factors and how people apply, how that works out. We'll talk about when somebody gets on benefits and that they want to go back to work, how the work incentive rules play out. And then the last bit will be on the Ticket to Work program. So go ahead. So at the Social Security Administration, I want to talk a little bit about our benefit programs. We have Social Security, of course, is the program that most people are familiar with us. It is based on someone having worked and paid into the Social Security system for a while. Family members could be entitled on the record of a worker who is either retired or deceased, or if they're disabled as well, you could have spouse and children receiving benefits. We'll talk about that. And just at the bottom, an overview, we also have, of course, the retirement program. We're not going to be talking about that today, but you have to be at least 62 to get your own retirement. Disability, which we will cover. You can get that at any age if you've worked long enough. And survivor's benefit, where a worker passes away, if they have a spouse and their children, in a lot of cases, those folks can receive benefits as well. As we said, we're going to focus here today on disability. So you can go next slide, Ken. And the definition of disability for benefits is it's a strict definition. Somebody has to have a physical or mental impairment, which is expected to last or has already lasted 12 months or is expected to result in death. So what that means is that somebody could have an impairment which is going to be difficult to deal with for like 6 months or 8 months or whatever, and may make them unable to work during that time. But if the expectation is not that it's not going to last 12 months, then most likely a person would be denied if they applied for disability. So that's the requirement there. And also, in addition to having the impairment, it must prevent the worker from engaging in what we call substantial gainful activity, or SGA. So if you've dealt with Social Security, you may have heard that term thrown around a bit, SGA. We'll talk about that on the next slide. So what is SGA, breaking it down? So, well, the gainful activity part is basically working for pay, whether you're an employee or whether you're self-employed. You're engaging some activity which is going to hopefully bring you some earnings. And when you talk about something being substantial, well, that's a relative term. But in this case, substantial earnings refers to earnings of at least $1,350 a month, gross earnings. So what that means is that a person could be working and making less than $1,350 and have an impairment, and they could be approved for disability. So once you reach $1,350 or more, though, the work is considered to be substantial, and that would prevent you from getting approved for disability. So you have to be working either not at all, or if you are working, you're earning less than that each month. So you have to have the impairment and the inability to do substantial work. Okay, Catherine. So when we talk about someone becoming disabled and they're filing a claim, we refer to what's called the disability onset date. And that's the earliest date that the condition meets certain medical requirements. It's of a certain severity. So the medical people who make these determinations, we'll talk about them in a second, but they have guidelines as to different types of conditions and how severe they have to be. So the onset date refers to the date that the condition meets the medical requirements, and the other part of this is the person was not working above that SGA level of $1,350 a month. So what that means here is that you could have a person who has a condition which is severe enough medically, but they're pushing themselves and they're going to work and they're making over $1,350. So they would not be approved for disability there because they don't meet both requirements here. So they're going to work, they have a condition. If they would knock their earnings down below $1,350, then they would probably be approved for benefits. Okay, so when we talk about that date, we're talking about when they meet both requirements here. Okay. So who can qualify for Social Security disability? Well, the most common type of situation is the worker himself or herself, someone who's worked a period of time under Social Security, they become disabled, and they're filing based on their own work history. We also have two other categories which don't happen as much, but you could have someone who's a widow or widower, and they're disabled, and they're filing on the work record of their deceased husband or wife. They're not filing on their own work history. The key thing here is that they have to become disabled between the ages of 50 to 60. Once someone reaches the age of 60, they can get widow or widower's benefits just based on the fact of being of that age. Whereas before that, from 50 to 60, they would have to be disabled during that time. And then we also have a disabled adult child category. This is someone who's filing on the work record of their parent. This is a person who's over 18, therefore they are an adult, but they had a disability that began before the age of 22. So a lot of times, folks who have some type of intellectual disability, I'll say, they may have a mother or father go on benefits later in their life, and they could be 30 or 40 years old, but if they've had this condition since before they turn 22, they can get benefits as a disabled adult child. So number one is the worker. That's most of the cases are the worker filing their own record, and then you have disabled widow and disabled adult child. Okay, So let's just talk a little bit about the disabled worker, someone filing on their own work record. We mentioned that a person has to pay into Social Security for a while to be insured for benefits. So likewise, the disabled worker has to have a certain number of credits. And when you work this year, each $1,510 of gross earnings that a person has, and it says FICA because that's the FICA tax is the Social Security tax, the Federal Insurance Contribution Act tax, and that gives you one credit, $1,510 of gross earnings. But you can only earn 4 credits in a calendar year, no matter how much you earn. So once a person makes $6,040 in 2022, they have their 4 credits in the books, okay? Now for disability, the person must meet what's called being both fully insured and currently insured. So let's go to the next slide and we'll show you what we're talking about here. The fully insured part is pretty simple. To be fully insured, a person needs 1 work credit for each year from age 22 until the year they become disabled. So the example is someone becomes disabled at the age of 50. Well, you take 50, you subtract 22, and you have 28 credits, which is needed, okay? So you can earn 4 credits in a year. So that would mean this person has to have about 7 years of work overall. And in any case, no matter, even young people, they have to have at least 6 credits or a year and a half of work at the minimum, okay? But as you get a little older, you can see you'll need more credits. So that's the number of overall credits a person has. That can be scattered throughout their life, okay, as long as they have a certain total. So that's fully insured. So we'll go to the next one for currently insured. Currently insured means that, go back one, Catherine, if you can, to the first red one. So currently insured means that you have a current connection to the Social Security program. You've recently been working. And the way this works is that depending upon the age you are when you become disabled, that will dictate how many credits you need within a certain specified time frame. So if a person becomes disabled at age 31 or older, they need to have 20 credits in the 40 credit period prior to their becoming disabled. So basically, remember, you can earn 4 credits in a year. So when we look back 40 credit in a 40 credit period, we're looking back in the last 10 years. So let's say a person becomes disabled at the age of 40. We would look from the period of age 30 to age 40. Those 10 years, they could have earned 40 credits. They need to have at least 20. So we call that basically 5 of the last 10 years. So if this person only had 17 or 18 or 19 credits, even though they may be medically disabled, they would not be approved for disability. So that's why it's important for people to keep their hand in a Social Security covered job. Okay, next one, Captain. Now, if a person becomes disabled a little bit younger, obviously they need less credits because they haven't had as much time to accumulate a lot of credits. So if you become disabled between the ages of 24 to 30, you need credits for half of the time from age 21 until the date you become disabled. So let's say you become disabled at 29. So 21 to 29 is 8 years. You could have earned a maximum of 32 credits. You would need to have half of that. You would need to have 16 during that period. So again, as you're a little bit younger, you need less credits. And we'll go to the next one, Catherine. If a person's very young, becomes disabled under age 24, as we mentioned already, they need 6 credits, which is about a year and a half of work in the 3-year period prior to becoming disabled. So let's say they become disabled at 22. We're going to look from age 19 to 22. That's a 3-year period. They need to have worked about a year and a half of those 3 years. So this is what's called currently insured. So for fully insured, you just need a total number of credits. It can be scattered throughout your lifetime. But for the currently insured, it has to be within a reasonable period of time close to when you become disabled, okay? Go ahead, Captain. So one thing about the Social Security disability benefit, it's equal to a person's full retirement benefit. It's the maximum benefit a person can get. So, you know, if someone becomes disabled at a young age, 30 or 40, we take that into consideration. And that they may not be able to work again the rest of their life or have earnings. And therefore, we take that into consideration, and tends to be that younger people get a higher rate of return on Social Security if they become disabled at a young age, because they're not going to have the ability to, build up a long work history. So therefore, the way the computation is done, the way the calculation is done, we take that into consideration, and you generally get a higher benefit. The spouse and children of disabled workers, we mentioned this already, they may be eligible for benefits, but there is a cap on how much benefits can be paid to a family. So for instance, if there was 4 children or 6 children, there's a total amount of benefits that can be paid to the family. So it would be sort of divided up equally among all the folks. So in a sense, having more children is not going to give you a higher total benefit for the family. It's going to be divided up. And then if one child reaches a certain age and they go off the program, then the family maximum of benefits will be rebalanced for the people that are remaining on the record. Okay. All right, Catherine. So before we talk about filing for benefits, I don't know, Catherine, is there any questions, or anybody want to ask a question now about what we've talked about so far? If not, we'll go ahead, but anything there?
We did have a question come in through chat. The question is, does a disabled adult child have to wait until a parent files and collects their benefit?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. The parent has to either be receiving, they could be receiving retirement, or they could be receiving their own disability, or they could have passed away, and if they're deceased, they would have to have worked a certain amount of time. But yes, the disabled adult child needs a parent to either be receiving or a parent who is deceased and worked long enough.
All right, thank you. No other questions in chat at this time.
Okay. So if we talk about wanting to file for disability, you can do it a couple ways. You can do it on our website, ssa.gov. For Social Security disability, if you're filing on the record of on your own record, you can complete the entire application online. Okay. So you can do the whole thing online that way. Okay, go ahead, Kathy. If a person doesn't want to do it online, the other options are to do it over the phone with our employees, or do it with an in-office appointment. So to set up an appointment, you can call our 800 number, 1-800-772-1213, and you can say, I want to file for disability, and they'll set up an appointment that on a certain day at a particular office, wherever you live, is going to be either calling you or you'll be going in. Sometimes you may be sent a disability starter kit in advance. There's some forms you could complete in advance of the appointment. Not necessarily so in all cases. Okay, go ahead. So they'll say, 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, the Norristown office is going to call you, or you'll go into the office either way. Okay. So was that the slide before, Catherine? Was that just about the ways to file? Was that what that was about? Okay, fine. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's good. You can go ahead. So when you file a claim, you're going to be giving us all the information about who has the medical records and all that. That'll be recorded by the local office, or you do that online. The information, medical information, is then sent to what's called the Disability Determination Services site. Locally, there's one in Harrisburg, there's one in Wilkes-Barre, there's another in Greensburg, PA, I think. But those folks there work for the state of Pennsylvania. They do the determinations for us. And they have a disability evaluation specialist, a physician who's going to review the medical evidence, and they're going to make a determination as to whether the case is approved or not. Generally, that's going to take about 90 to 100 days. Could be a little less, could be a little more. That's the average amount of time, a little over 3 months or so. Okay, go ahead. So if at that time the claim for Social Security disability is approved, the benefits will be due after a 5-month waiting period. So the example here is that, let's say a person became disabled today, June 17th. Say they had a traumatic accident or whatever today. We know today's the date that the disability began. and they file a claim and they get approved, and the medical people say, yes, this person was disabled June 17th. So there's a 5-month waiting period thereafter for which the person does not get paid. So those 5 months here would be July, starts with the next full month, July, August, September, October, November. And then the entitlement would begin with the month of December of this year. And the first check would be paid in January because the Social Security payments are made the following month. Okay, so this person who had a traumatic accident today would be looking at a benefit starting in January calendar month. Okay. The only exceptions to that 5-month waiting period are a disabled adult child does not have to wait the 5 months. And sometimes when a person who was on disability goes off of it, maybe usually because of work, and now they later come back and they're being reinstated, there's a certain procedure for that where they would not have to serve the 5-month waiting period. But pretty much on all other situations, you're serving that 5-month waiting period. Okay. When the claim is approved, there's a possibility of going back and paying the person retroactively, depending upon when their disability onset date was. And we can go back as much as 12 months prior to the application date. But again, the person would have to have been disabled in the past and would have to serve the 5-month waiting period. We have to take that into account. So that would be a situation where it doesn't come up that much, where maybe a person wasn't filing and they've been disabled for a while, but they just never filed with us, and now they are. It's a possibility they can go back and be paid retroactively. And also, too, sometimes when a person has a denial initially on their case and they appeal it, and it takes a while to finally get an allowance, then they could have some retroactive money coming. Okay? Go ahead, Kat. Somebody who gets Social Security disability can get Medicare. That would be after they're entitled to Social Security disability benefits for 24 months. So for example, a person starts to receive benefits at the age of 25. 2 years later, at the age of 27, Medicare will be available to them. But, you know, that's after they wait 24 months, and they also have the 5-month waiting period. So you can call it 29 months before Medicare would start. Not Medicaid, but Medicare. Okay. If the person files a claim and it's denied, they can appeal the denial. They would have 60 days from the time they received the denial notice in the mail. And the first level of appeal is called a reconsideration. And in that situation, someone file an appeal, the claim would go back up to the disability determination site, but a whole different set of people will work on the reconsideration, people who did not have input in the first decision. So that can take a while to get a decision there. If you're approved at the recon level, then we'll go back and pay you, based on the time frames. If the person's denied at the recon level, there's 3 other levels of appeal that are also available to them after that. One is the hearing before the administrative law judge. If that's denied, a person can file an appeals council review. That's down in the Washington, D.C. area. Person does not have to go there, but that's where it would be held. And then if that's denied, a person can file a lawsuit in federal court. So those are the levels of appeal. And really, if someone's denied and they think the decision is wrong, which I guess they would, they can file these appeals, and it's best to do it because it keeps the claim going. And if you're approved, they're going to be generally pay you back based on the original application date. If you let more than 60 days go by, you come into us at 90 days or so, you're pretty much starting over with the whole new claim. Okay? Okay, Kath. Okay, so now we're going to talk about working and receiving. But again, I'll ask Catherine if there's any questions or any chat questions or anything like that.
There are no chat questions at this time. We are going to pause for a moment and switch our ASL interpreters.
Okay. Can go.
Okay, we are ready to go.
Okay. So again, working and receiving disability benefits, there are certain rules that apply to that. We're going to talk about these. It's called work incentives. That's our program. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, you may be familiar with this publication. It's called the Red Book. We'll talk a little bit about that. It has a lot of information about working while you're receiving. And then the last piece will be on the Ticket to Work program. So go ahead, Catherine. So now we're going to talk about a Social Security beneficiary who returns to work. So again, just to reiterate, next week we'll be talking about SSI. The rules are completely different. But so this is just for Social Security today. So everybody on Social Security disability has a trial work period available to them. And this is a period of time where a person can test their ability to work, and they don't have any threat of losing benefits while they're testing their ability to work. So a person can work in 9 individual months. They don't have to be in a row. And they will receive their Social Security disability during the time they're working, regardless of any earnings they have, no matter what they make. And to have a month of work count as a trial work month, the person has to earn at least $970. So let's say a person's on disability and they go out and they make $800. Well, you have to report that to us, but it's not going to count as one of your 9 trial work months because you didn't make $970. So it really is not going to have much of effect on anything. Okay, these 9 months, as they said, they don't need to be in a row, but they can be scattered over a 60-month period, over a 5-year period. So let's say a person works for 5 months and they stop, they still have 4 remaining trial work months available to them. Okay, so until they get 9 months of work in a 60-month period, the trial work period is not complete. So go ahead, Captain. So what happens if the person does work in 9 months? Well, once that 9-month period is concluded of work, we're going to look at, Social Security is going to look at the ongoing work that you're doing, and we're going to evaluate it. And basically what it comes down to is the work you've done and you're going to do going forward, is it substantial or not? If it's not substantial, okay, which means it averages less than $13.50 a month, then your Social Security disability benefit will just continue. You keep working at that job because you're not doing substantial work. If, however, the work is substantial, and basically we would take the average of the 9 months of work, and if it averages out to be $13.50 or more, and you're making more than that going forward, we will pay you for months 10, 11, and 12. So you did 9 months of work, you do this evaluation. Sometimes we're kind of doing this retroactively because we have to evaluate your work. But you would be due benefits for an additional 3 months, which I'm going to say is month 10, 11, and 12. And then your benefits will be suspended because you're working at a substantial level. So they would stop for the time being. So let's go to the next one, Captain. Beginning with month 13, so you have 9 months of trial work and you have 3 what we call grace months where you've been paid even though you've been making over the SGA amount. Going forward after month 12, we have months 13 through 45 called the extended period of eligibility, the EPE. So after the 12 months for trial work and grace months, this EPE runs an additional 33 months out to month 45. And month 45, you're getting close to a 4-year period now. Okay, from when you first started working until as you go through. And what happens during this EPE is almost like a roller coaster where you could be paid for some months and not paid for others. We will not pay you for any months in 13 through 45 whenever you do SGA. So let's say you're continuing on, you're making $1,500 a month. So month 13, 14, 15. You're not going to get paid for those months because you're doing substantial work. But then, of course, the reverse is true. The last bullet at the bottom, if you drop down below $13.50, then we will pay you. So you could be in a situation, I just I just mentioned where number month 13, 14, 15, you're not getting paid. And then month 16, maybe you stopped working completely. Maybe you were sick for a while. You didn't get paid full amount. Whatever it might be, maybe you're going to change jobs. We will pay you then for months you make under 1350. So you can kind of be up and down as we go through this off and on for a period up to close to 4 years. So if something doesn't work out, you've tried it for a while and you're in your EPE, if you stop, then we're just going to start paying you again your full benefit. Okay. And keep in mind, the 1350 figure is the figure for this year. In October, the cost of living increase will be announced for people on Social Security. And when that is announced, also they will announce the new categories for the new category amounts for 2023. So generally, this will go up. I would imagine it's going to certainly go up over $1,400 next year. It's going to go up. So you have to, look for that for next year. So we're talking with 2022 numbers right now. All right, Captain. One of the things that is a good provision available to people is the provision for what's called impairment-related work expenses. After a person completes the 9 months of their trial work, if they have some things that they need, either items or services that they need in order to be able to work, and they're paying for these things, the costs of these things can be deducted from the earnings in determining SGA. So let's say a person makes $1,400 a month. Well, $1,400 a month is over the $1,350, and that would make them would be considered to performing SGA. However, if they're paying $125 a month because they need maybe somebody to help them in the morning get ready for work, or maybe they got to pay for special transportation or something that's coming out of their pocket, and in this case, I'm saying it amounts to $125, we would take that off the $1,400. And we would only count as if they were making $1,275. $1,275 then would be under $1,350, and therefore we would pay them a disability benefit for that month, even though they actually made $1,400. So the person must not be reimbursed for this item. For instance, they can't have like insurance that's going to pay for it. They're paying for it out of their own pocket, and they're covering the cost of it. The cost must be reasonable, and you see in quotation marks because there's a certain scale for this. And the item is paid for in the work month. So the person's working in June, making $1,400, but they pay the expense of impairment-related work expenses $125 in the month of June. So then we would not count the full amount of their earnings, and that would mean they could keep their check. So now, not everybody who works has these expenses, but some people do. And there's a list of all kinds of things that could qualify there. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Okay, Captain. So we said this EPE could run out to month 45. That's almost 4 years. So what happens if the person works after the EPE ends? Well, if they perform SGA in any month, beginning with month number 46 or later, they're considered to be quote unquote terminated from Social Security. It terminates their eligibility. And that sounds pretty dire, pretty severe, but we'll go to the next slide. Because what is available to them is a provision called Expedited Reinstatement. So let's say the person is making over SGA, they hit month 46, we're going to terminate them. If at some point thereafter earnings fall below SGA, the benefit will be reinstated and they don't need to file a new application. This has to happen, however, within 5 years of when they were terminated, and the person must have the same disability. You can receive up to 6 months of benefits and Medicare while we're waiting making a decision on whether they're still disabled or not. So this expedited reinstatement means a person who had their benefits stopped and considered to be terminated after month 45, if they later go back to work, rather than having to go through a whole new application, they can just come to us and we'll review the medical history and get the new records and all. So that sort of is almost like being on a fast track to get back on benefits, okay? Go ahead, Captain. Medicare All disability recipients we mentioned are Medicare eligible after 24 months of benefit entitlement. Remember what we said, they go on benefits at 25, they can get benefits at Medicare at 27. After the 9-month trial work period, Medicare can continue for 93 months regardless of SGA. So 9 months for trial work, 93 months thereafter, that's 102 months, that's 8.5 years. And Medicare would continue without any regard to whether they're working at the SGA level or not. They would keep their Medicare, okay? So people should not be afraid to lose their Medicare by returning to work. Go ahead, Catherine. Go to the next, well, and even if you went past 93 months, there's a way to keep your Medicare too. Okay. Any questions now, Catherine? Because we're going to go on to the Red Book, and then we'll go into Ticket to Work.
We have one. I think you answered this, but the question is regarding disabled adult children benefit. Is there a 2-year waiting period for medical benefits?
Yes, there's a 2-year waiting period for Medicare for them. The disabled adult child, the exception is that they don't have to serve the 5-month waiting period when they first get approved. They would get paid pretty much immediately. But yes, they have the 24-month period to wait.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
No other questions in chat right now?
All right. Now, the Red Book, I don't know, are people familiar with what we call the Red Book at Social Security? It's sort of a compendium of all the work incentives. So you can find it on our website, and it's called the Red Book because if you get a hard copy of it, it's red, okay? So go to the next slide, Catherine. And, you know, you can go to our website, and, you know, it's a pretty big book because it covers both Social Security and SSI work incentives. But you can go to our website and what's called publications. That's on the front page. There's a tile on the left-hand side at the bottom for publications. You click on that, and then you can do a search for Red Book there, and it'll come up. And then you see that red arrow there where I have order. So you can order it too if you want to get a hard copy. Go ahead, Catherine. And then when you click on that, the order, you can see it gives you the address in Baltimore. You can either write to them if you want, or at the bottom is a little bit cut off. You can phone them, or you can fax or even email them down in Baltimore at the publication site, and they will mail you out, you know, they will mail you a hard copy of the Red Book. Okay, and it's a good book to have because it explains all the different provisions for Social Security and for SSI for working. Okay. Okay, Catherine. And the last piece we're going to do is on the Ticket to Work. I'm assuming you've heard of that. It's a program that's open to anybody on disability, both Social Security and SSI, from the ages of 18 to 64. And the Ticket to Work, what it basically does is provide free employment services to people, and that could take a variety of forms. It could be career counseling, it could be vocational rehabilitation, it could be job training, job coach, job placement. Okay. The program is voluntary. No one is required to participate in it if they don't want to, and they could even get in it and get out if they want to, you know, they don't like it or whatever. It's designed to help people become self-sufficient. In this case, self-sufficient means ultimately in time you're making enough money at a job to go off Social Security, to go off SSI. Okay, so next one, Catherine. And we have service providers who work on the Ticket to Work program. They're approved by the federal government, and they're called employment networks, ENs. They provide either virtual services or in-person services. A lot of times they're doing virtual now, but it could also be in person. So you could, if it's virtual, you could be dealing with an organization that's even somewhere else around the country. It doesn't have to be local. These are public or private organizations that can have a contract with Social Security. They've been approved, they've been vetted, and they're going to provide certain services. Also, the state Pennsylvania Office of Voc Rehab, OVR, they can also provide services as well. So go ahead, Catherine. So the Ticket to Work, you would sign up with, we'll show at the end, but you would sign up with a company, and you know they would work with you. What are the advantages to being in the Ticket to Work? Well, if you're making what's called timely progress, you will not be subject to SSA medical reviews. People who are on disability from time to time have to get reviewed medically to see if they're still disabled. And sometimes we find that people are no longer medically disabled and they would be taken off the program. But if you're in the Ticket to Work program and you're using it, you're making timely progress, you will not have these medical reviews. You'll not be subject to that. So what's timely progress? Basically, it's you working at a job or completing educational or training program with the Ticket to Work folks. So as long as you're sort of keeping up with it, once you signed up, you know, you're making timely progress in most cases. Okay. Go ahead, Catherine. So where do you start? Well, we have a Ticket to Work helpline. You see it there, 866-968-7842. Our website is called Choose Work, and you see it there, choosework.ssa.gov. Has a lot of information about it. There's a whole lot of stuff on there. And you can also, if you want to find employment networks that serve your county where you live, you can use the online Find Help tool to search for employment networks. I believe that's the next slide. And you use this Find Help when you go to this Choose Work website. You hit the Find Help, and what you're going to get is you're going to get first on the left-hand side the different types of employment networks that are there, and they'll tell you. And you can do a search for, like, okay, I want in-person services, I want visual services, virtual services, whatever you want. You put in your zip code. You tell them what distance you want to search for companies that are involved with this, and you can just build certain parameters and tell them what you want, what you're looking for, and the type of services, things like that. And then I think that's the last. Is that the last slide, Catherine, or is there one extra? So yeah, that's the last one. So, you know, when you do that search, they're going to tell you what companies would be ideal for you based on your disability and some other things. And then you know, you can have your choice to pick from. And if you start with the Ticket to Work and you don't like it, you can always drop out of being involved with one company. You can sign up with somebody else. You have one company at a time though, that you're involved, one provider. Okay. All right. So that's what I have, Catherine. I don't know, again, if people have questions, or we can just talk about whatever.
There are no questions in chat right now. I don't know if any of our participants live would like to unmute and ask any questions. Feel free to do that.
Either I've thoroughly confused everybody, or maybe I've been very clear for once in my life.
This is Carolyn. I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can,
yes.
Carolyn.
Okay. I have two children, one who has Down syndrome, who has been receiving SSI for a long period of time. And once her father begins to take his benefit, then she will switch over. So I just want to make sure I understand the prior question in the chat. Once she collects under her father's benefit, she will then have to wait. She's currently receiving Medicaid, so she will have to wait 2 years for that to switch over to Medicare.
Right. She would not be entitled to Medicare until she's been getting 24 months worth of Social Security, you know, child's benefits in that case.
Okay. And another question that I have, a lot of this is related to the situation during the pandemic when individuals were not available in the office. It's been extremely difficult to get in contact with the Social Security office. I'm sure this is something you're well aware of. When my daughter was younger, she basically had someone that was kind of assigned to her, and I could reach out to that individual directly and leave a message. Is that still an option, you know, to have someone that we can contact directly as opposed to just calling in to the 800 number? And sometimes the Lehigh County office would actually be so busy, it would roll over to the Bethlehem office. They would tell me they weren't able to help me, or I would call the national 800 number. And again, you really have to work directly with your county office. So that's been an issue. Any way to get around that?
Well, just to kind of recap, April 7th is when the offices reopened for full service, for walk-in, face-to-face. Before that, we were only doing phone and internet business. Okay, so April 7th, so it's about what? It's about 2.5 months or so now that each office is open weekdays 9 to 4. And as far as, they don't really like assign a worker to a particular recipient, but mostly what happens is that within each office, Allentown, Bethlehem, wherever, the claims reps have a alphabetical breakdown of folks. So it could be that, and that does change sometimes frequently, sometimes not so frequently. So you may have a claims rep who's handling, your daughter's SSI for a while, and then there could be a switch within the office. But the answer is, you might want to maybe go down to the office and see, like, make that one trip and hopefully see if you can find out who would be handling any situation with your daughter going forward, because it's been a while. And what's happening is that even though the offices are open, we probably have about half of the staff in each day, because they didn't want to overload and go, because of social distancing and COVID and all. They tried to limit how many employees are in the office, and the others are working from home. So a person might be coming in 3 days a week and working from home 2 days. But since that time has passed, we had a lot of problems with our phones. We're doing better now. So I would suggest, rather than the 800 number, you really want to get a solid contact. You probably need to make the one trip down there and see if you can nail down who that would be going forward. But you should be able to deal with the local office.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know it's been difficult. We've had some. What happened basically was, you have to remember, like, before, when we were open before COVID, you had a portion of people calling us, a portion coming in. So then when we stopped allowing people to come in, that sort of overloaded the phone system, and we found some weaknesses in the phone system that they've since worked with the provider to try to fix. So hopefully we're doing better with that now. But